The mysterious encounter. The stars stretched across the black sky like endless sparks of fire. A single ship moved slowly through the quiet space, its silver surface shining against the darkness. Inside the ship, a lone human traveler checked his controls again and again, making sure the course was correct. His name was Captain Daniel Hayes, a man who had left Earth to explore the unknown. He had faced many dangers before, but this mission felt different. Something in his heart told him that this journey would change his life forever. The ship glided toward a planet hidden deep within uncharted space. From a distance, the planet looked like a jewel, its surface glowing with blue oceans, green lands, and strange golden clouds. Daniel slowed his ship as he entered the atmosphere, his eyes fixed on the beauty before him. But beauty in space was never without danger. The ship shook as winds of energy pushed against it, almost as if the planet itself was alive and trying to test him. He gripped the controls tightly, guiding the ship through until finally the shaking stopped. The vessel landed softly on an open field surrounded by tall, glowing trees. Strange flowers opened their petals as if welcoming him, and glowing insects floated in the air like living lanterns. Daniel stepped outside, the ground soft under his boots. The air was warm, filled with a sweet smell that reminded him of Earth, but stronger. Every step he took made the land whisper. The grass seemed to move as if it had its own voice. He looked around carefully, scanning the area for signs of life. The silence was heavy, yet he could feel eyes watching him from somewhere unseen. His training told him to be ready, but his curiosity pushed him forward. The deeper he walked into the glowing forest, the stranger it became. Floating stones hovered in the air, shining softly. The trees bent as if they were alive, moving aside to clear a path for him. It was beautiful, but it was also unsettling. As though the world itself was leading him to something, Daniel's heart beat faster, and his hand stayed close to the weapon at his side. But he knew that if this was the world he had been searching for, he had to take the risk. Then he heard it. A sound, soft at first, like a song carried by the wind. He followed it, his steps careful but quick. The song grew stronger, echoing through the trees, filling the air with mystery. And then, at the center of a glowing clearing, he saw her. She stood tall, her figure wrapped in silver and blue garments that shimmered like starlight. Her eyes glowed faintly, filled with strength and pride. A crown of crystals rested on her head, marking her as someone important. Her skin held a soft glow, her presence almost divine. Daniel froze, realizing what he was seeing. An alien princess. She looked at him with sharp eyes, as if she could see through his soul. For a moment, the clearing was silent, only the strange light between them flickering. The human explorer and the alien royal faced each other. Two lives from two different worlds crossing for the first time. Daniel opened his mouth to speak, but before he could say anything, she raised her hand. Her voice rang out, clear and filled with disbelief. "Wait, you want me as your wife?" The words cut through the air like thunder. Daniel's eyes widened, his mind racing. He had not even spoken a word, and yet she accused him of something impossible. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath, the glowing trees leaning closer as if to listen. The human stood frozen, unsure if this was a dream or a mistake. But the princess's eyes did not waver. They were filled with both shock and challenge. Why did she say those words? Did she know something he did not tease? Or had fate already decided a path he could not escape? The silence grew heavy once again, and Daniel realized that this meeting was only the beginning of a story far greater than he had ever imagined. The princess's dilemma. The forest was still glowing when silence fell again. Captain Daniel Hayes stood frozen, his mind turning in circles. He had traveled across galaxies, yet nothing prepared him for this moment. An alien princess had looked straight into his eyes and spoken words that shook him. Her voice still echoed in his ears. "Wait, you want me as your wife?" The princess did not move. She stood tall, her silver and blue garments shining under the strange golden sky. Her face showed both strength and confusion. Her eyes burned with 1,000 unspoken questions. Daniel wanted to speak, to explain, but something about her stare kept him silent. In her world, silence was not weakness, it was power. The princess, whose name was Serenia, was not only a daughter of the crown, she was heir to a kingdom older than most stars. Her people, the Lumerians, had ruled this land for centuries. They believed humans were wild, dangerous, and unworthy. Yet here stood one, bold enough to arrive on their sacred ground. Serenia felt her chest tighten as she looked at him. The human was different from what she had imagined. He did not look like a conqueror. He did not wear heavy armor or carry weapons of destruction. Instead, he stood with steady eyes, cautious but not afraid. Why then did the ancient prophecy echo in her mind? A stranger from the stars will bind two worlds, not with war, but with a vow of unity. These words had been carved into the walls of her palace long before her birth, and now, seeing him before her, she wondered, was fate playing a cruel trick? Daniel finally found his voice. "I don't understand," he said softly. "I never asked." But his words caught in his throat, because deep inside, he knew the truth. The mission that brought him here was not only about discovery, it was about survival. Earth was dying, its air poisoned, its oceans fading. His leaders had sent him to search for new allies, new hope. But the plan was risky. In Lumerian culture, an alliance was never signed with ink. It was sealed with something greater: marriage. The thought burned in his mind as Serenia studied him. She did not know his secret, but she felt his hesitation. Her heart told her he carried more than just curiosity. He carried desperation. For Serenia, the dilemma grew heavier. Her people expected her to guard the throne. They wanted her to keep humans out, to protect the kingdom from strange outsiders. Yet here he was, standing in her sacred forest, not by accident but by choice. And something about his presence pulled at her in ways she did not want to admit. The wind stirred the glowing trees, filling the air with soft whispers. Her mind filled with memories of her counsel, voices that often warned her, "Do not trust the humans, princess, for their hunger is endless." But her own heart whispered something else. What if this man is not like the others? What if his words can change everything? Daniel took a careful step forward, his voice calm, yet heavy with truth. "I came here not to harm, but to seek help," he said. His words were simple, but in them was an honesty she could not ignore. Serenia's lips parted, but she spoke no reply. Instead, her thoughts raced faster than the stars in the sky. If she refused him now, perhaps he would be banished. Her people would never know what fate had placed before them. But if she accepted him, even as a guest, her world would change. Her reputation, her honor, her crown, all of it would be questioned. The dilemma burned inside her chest like fire. She was a princess, a leader, a warrior, but in that moment she was also a woman standing face to face with a destiny she had not chosen. The forest lights grew brighter. Strange whispers rose in the air, as if the land itself was listening. Finally, Serenia spoke again, her voice calm but sharp. "You say you came for peace," she said. "But peace is not free, human." Daniel's jaw tightened. He knew what she meant. He had read about their traditions. To ask for peace was to ask for a bond, and in their culture, that bond was not between armies or nations. It was between hearts. Serenia stepped closer, her eyes fixed on him, her voice lowered, filled with both doubt and challenge. "Tell me then, stranger from the stars, are you willing to risk everything for what you seek?" Daniel's breath caught in his chest because he already knew the answer. He had no choice. For Earth, for humanity, for survival itself. He had to say yes, and as the princess watched him, the forest around them seemed to lean closer. The glowing trees, the whispering winds, even the silent stars above, all waited for his reply. A choice that could change not only his life, but the fate of two worlds forever. The human's secret. The golden light of the alien forest surrounded them. Serenia, the alien princess, stood tall with her crown shining, her eyes sharp and filled with doubt. Captain Daniel Hayes, the human traveler, faced her in silence, his mind heavy with thoughts. He had not expected this meeting, and he had not expected her words. But now, as the forest held its breath, he knew he could not hide the truth for long. Daniel had been trained for many missions. He had traveled across dangerous systems, fought storms of fire and ice. But this mission was unlike the others. This was not about discovery. It was about survival. The survival of his world. Earth was weak, its air poisoned by centuries of war and greed, its oceans gray and dying, its people growing hopeless as each year passed. Daniel had left not only as an explorer, but as a last hope, a messenger carrying the desperate wish of billions. But how could he tell her? How could he explain that her words, wife, marriage, bond, were not only strange customs to him, they were the only possible key to saving his people? He looked at Serenia, and for a moment he saw not only a princess, he saw a gate, a bridge, the only chance for his dying world, and that thought filled him with guilt. Was he truly seeking her heart, or only her crown? The princess stepped closer, her silver garments brushing softly against the glowing grass. Her eyes narrowed, her voice calm but filled with suspicion. "You still have not answered me, human," she said. "You stand here in my forest with secrets. Tell me why you came. Tell me what you hide." Daniel's heart raced. He had been told to keep the mission quiet until trust was gained, but something in her voice, something in her piercing eyes, made lies impossible. He drew a deep breath, his chest heavy with the weight of his people's hope. "My world is dying," he said at last. The words hung in the air like thunder. Serenia's eyes widened slightly, but she did not speak. Instead, she listened, her silence demanding the truth. "Our skies are broken," Daniel continued. "Our oceans are poisoned. We have only years left. I was sent to find hope, to find a people who could help us, not with weapons, not with conquest, but with unity." Serenia's gaze sharpened. The word unity carried great power in her culture. In her kingdom, unity was not spoken lightly. It was not a treaty, not a contract. It was a vow of hearts. And suddenly, his presence, his strange courage, his unexpected honesty, it all made sense to her. The prophecy that haunted her dreams, the whispers of her counsel, the strange pull in her chest. Could this human truly be the one foretold? Still, she could not let her heart decide so quickly. Her duty was heavy. Her people feared humans for good reason. They believed humans were greedy, always taking, never giving. If she trusted him, she risked not only herself, but her entire world. Serenia's voice turned colder. "You say your world is dying," she said. "Then why must mine pay the price?" Daniel's jaw tightened. He had expected this question. He had feared it more than anything. "I do not ask for your world," he said firmly. "I ask only for a chance to stand with you, to prove that humans can give as much as they take, to show that we are more than our mistakes." The princess studied him carefully. His voice was strong, yet his eyes carried a weight she could not ignore. She saw pain there. She saw a man who carried not only his own life, but the hope of millions behind him. Her heart stirred against her will, but her mind reminded her of her duty. She turned away, staring into the glowing forest as whispers of old songs rose with the wind. Her ancestors had warned her of choices like this, choices that could break or save a kingdom. At last, she spoke again, her voice soft but firm. "If what you say is true, then your fate will not be decided by me alone. My council will demand answers. My people will demand proof." Daniel nodded slowly. He expected nothing less, but in his heart, he feared what that meant, because he knew the Lumerian ways. He had studied them, and he knew what kind of proof they demanded. It was never words. It was never promises. It was trials, tests of courage, truth, and loyalty. And each trial was meant to break the weak. Daniel's stomach tightened, but he did not show fear. Instead, he stood tall, his eyes steady. "If trials are what it takes, he said quietly. Then I will face them. Serenia turned back to him, her expression unreadable. Her heart whispered that this man might be different, but her duty whispered caution. She could not show mercy, not yet, not until the trials revealed the truth of his soul. And as the wind carried her crystal crown's faint glow into the darkening sky, one thought echoed in her mind. If the prophecy was real, then this human was not only a stranger, he was destiny, trials of trust. The night fell over the alien kingdom, but the sky did not turn dark. Instead, it glowed with rivers of golden light, as if stars had spilled across the heavens. Captain Daniel Hayes stood before the grand gates of the palace, his heart steady but heavy. He had survived battles before, but tonight was different. Tonight was not about fighting with weapons, it was about proving his soul. Princess Serenia walked ahead of him, her crystal crown shining faintly in the glowing air. She did not look at him as they entered the great hall. Her face was calm, but inside her chest, her heart battled with doubt. This human had spoken words that touched something deep within her, but words were never enough. Her people demanded proof. The council was waiting. Dozens of alien figures sat in a circle, their robes made of silver threads that shimmered like water. Their eyes glowed faintly, sharp and unkind as they studied Daniel. For centuries, they had feared humans. They called them destroyers, takers, liars. And now, one stood before them asking for unity. An elder with a staff of crystal rose, his voice was deep, like stone grinding against stone. Human, he said, you speak of peace, but peace in our kingdom is not given. It is earned. You must face the trials of trust. Only then will we see if your heart is true. Daniel nodded without hesitation. Inside, fear coiled like a snake, but he refused to show it. He knew that if he failed, Earth's last hope would die with him. Serenia's eyes flickered toward him, her expression unreadable. She had warned him, but he had not backed away, and part of her, against her will, admired that. The HFY. Saint Trial began at dawn. Daniel was led to a chamber filled with mirrors that shone like liquid glass. The elder's voice echoed in the chamber. Face the mirror of truth. It will show what you hide. If you cannot face yourself, you cannot face us. The mirrors shimmered, and suddenly Daniel saw not his reflection, but his failures. He saw earth burning, oceans fading. He saw the faces of those who had trusted him, and he saw his own guilt. The guilt of carrying a mission where even success meant sacrifice. He clenched his fists, fighting the pain. Then he whispered into the glowing chamber, Yes, I am afraid. Yes, I carry shame, but I will not run from it. Because my people need me, because I must try. The mirrors calmed, and the chamber grew still. The first trial was passed. The second trial was one of courage. Daniel was taken into the caverns beneath the palace. There, creatures of shadow moved in the darkness, their eyes burning red. The council's voice echoed. Face the guardians of fear. Show us if you can walk through terror without falling. The creatures circled him, growling, their teeth sharp like blades. Every instinct screamed at Daniel to fight, but he remembered what Serenia had told him. Courage was not always about striking first. It was about standing tall. He stepped forward, slowly, his voice steady. I will not harm you, he said. The shadows moved closer, their growls rising, but Daniel did not lift his weapon. Instead, he walked forward, his eyes firm, and one by one, the creatures stepped aside. He passed through them, his heart pounding but his spirit unbroken. The second trial was passed. The third trial was the hardest. It was the trial of loyalty. In the council chamber, Serenia stood beside him, though she did not speak. An elder placed a glowing crystal before Daniel. This crystal, the elder said, will show your deepest choice, if you are loyal to yourself or to others, if you are loyal to your kind or to us. The crystal lit up in his hands. Visions poured into his mind. He saw Earth once again, its people begging for hope. He saw Serenia, her eyes filled with both challenge and trust, and then the crystal's voice whispered to him, Choose, your people or hers. Daniel's chest tightened. How could he choose? If he chose Earth, Serenia would see him as selfish. If he chose Serenia, he would betray billions of humans. The weight of two worlds pressed down on him, but then he spoke, his voice breaking but strong. I choose both. I choose unity, because if one world dies while the other lives, then no bond is real, no trust is true. The crystal pulsed with light, brighter than fire. The council gasped. Never before had a human spoken such words. The third trial was passed. Serenia's eyes softened for the first time. She had watched him with suspicion, with doubt, but now she felt something different, a quiet respect, and something else she dared not name. The council, however, was not finished. The elder struck his staff against the ground. You have faced our trials, he said, but shadows move beyond our walls. Another test waits for you, human, not in chambers, not in caverns, but in the fire of war. Daniel's breath stilled. Serenia's eyes widened, for she knew what the elder meant. Enemies were near. The trials of trust were only the beginning. The rising threat, the air outside the palace grew heavy. The golden glow of the sky dimmed as dark clouds spread across the horizon. The ground trembled with a low, steady rhythm. It was not the heartbeat of the planet. It was the march of an army. Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the balcony with Princess Serenia. The council's words echoed in his ears. Another test waits for you, human, not in chambers, not in caverns, but in the fire of war. He had thought the trials of truth, courage, and loyalty were enough, but this was something greater. From the distant hills, ships appeared like black shadows. They glided across the sky, their sharp edges glowing with red light. Beneath them, the enemy forces marched, their armor reflecting fire. These were not Lumerians. They were the Dravari, a rival race hungry for conquest. For years they had watched Serenia's kingdom, waiting for weakness. Now, with a human inside the palace, they saw their chance. The council gathered, their voices filled with fear. This is the human's doing, one elder hissed. His arrival has drawn the enemy to our gates. Another elder struck his staff against the floor. Cast him out before it is too late. Serenia's eyes flashed with anger. She rose from her seat, her voice sharp as a blade. No, the Dravari would come whether he stood here or not. They want our land, our power, our crown. Do not blame the man who has faced our trials with honor. The council murmured, divided, but the threat outside the palace grew closer. Drums of war thundered through the ground. The people in the city below gathered in fear. Children clung to their mothers. Warriors tightened their grips on their weapons. The sky glowed red as the enemy prepared to strike. Daniel stood in silence. Inside, his chest burned with guilt. Was it true? Had his presence brought danger? He remembered Earth, its dying oceans, its fading skies. He remembered the hope that rested on his shoulders. But now, standing here, he wondered if he had doomed not only his own people, but hers as well. Serenia turned to him, her voice lower now. You see what this means, human. If you truly wish for unity, you must stand with us now, not with words, not with promises, but with your strength. Daniel nodded slowly. He had no army, no ships, but he had himself, and in that moment he knew what he must do. I will fight beside you, he said firmly, not as an outsider, not as a human, but as your ally. Her eyes softened for a breath, though she quickly turned away. Then prepare, she said, for the Dravari do not show mercy. The palace shifted into motion. Warriors rushed to their stations. Crystal weapons glowed with energy. The walls themselves seemed alive, humming with ancient power. Daniel was given armor, lighter than steel, yet strong as stone. It shimmered faintly, adjusting to his form. A weapon was placed in his hand, not a gun, but a blade of light that hummed with quiet energy. He had never seen such a weapon before, yet it felt strangely natural in his grip. The night grew louder as the enemy surrounded the city. Flames rose in the distance, The Dravari roared with voices like thunder. Their leader, a massive figure with crimson armor, raised his staff high. "Lumeria will fall," his voice boomed across the land. "Your princess will bow, and your kingdom will belong to us." The people trembled, but Serenia stepped forward onto the palace walls, her crown shining against the blood-red sky. Her voice rang clear and strong. "Lumeria bows to no tyrant, and as long as I breathe, this land will never fall." The crowd erupted with cries of courage. Her people drew strength from her, and even Daniel felt fire ignite in his chest. He had seen leaders before, but never one like her. She was more than a princess. She was a shield, a flame, a heart that refused to break. The Dravari leader growled, raising his staff again. "Then you will burn with your people." And with that, the first wave of fire struck. Explosions shook the walls. The sky rained with burning light. War had begun. Daniel gripped his blade. This was no trial in a chamber. This was no illusion of fear. This was real. He took his place beside Serenia, and for the first time, two worlds stood shoulder to shoulder, human and Lumerian, fate and prophecy, war and hope. As the enemy forces closed in, Daniel's mind burned with a single thought. This is the true trial, and I cannot fail, the princess's choice. The battlefield burned with fire. The golden skies of Lumeria were now painted red. Dravari warships hovered above the city, throwing down waves of flame. Their soldiers stormed the streets, armored in black and silver, their blades glowing with cruel light. Captain Daniel Hayes fought side by side with the Lumerians. His strange new blade hummed with power as he blocked, parried, and struck back. The weapon felt alive, as if the energy inside it matched the beat of his heart. Every movement drained him, yet he refused to fall, because he knew that if he failed here, both Earth and Lumeria would fall together. Princess Serenia stood on the palace walls, her voice sharp as steel as she gave orders. Her people looked to her not only as a leader, but as a flame of hope. She moved with grace and fury, her own weapon, a spear of pure crystal, cutting through the air like lightning. But even as she fought, her eyes often turned toward Daniel. She had seen him pass the trials of truth, courage, and loyalty. Now, she saw him prove himself again, not through words, but through blood and fire. The council gathered in the great hall, their voices filled with fear and anger. "This is madness," one elder shouted. "Our warriors fall, our walls crumble, the human brings ruin." Another elder struck the ground with his staff. "End this! Send him away before our kingdom burns to ash!" But Serenia entered the hall with fire still on her blade. Her crown glowed, her eyes blazed with fury. "You speak of sending him away?" she demanded. "Look outside. He fights while you hide. He bleeds for a world that is not even his. Would any of you do the same?" The council fell silent. Her words cut through their fear like a blade. But silence was not enough. A choice had to be made. The kingdom could not stand divided. Serenia's heart pounded. She had been raised to think of duty above all else, to protect her people, to defend the throne. But never had she been asked to choose between tradition and her own heart, between the voice of the council and the voice of fate, between her crown and a human stranger. She remembered the prophecy carved into the palace walls. A stranger from the stars will bind two worlds, not with war, but with a vow of unity. The words echoed in her mind like a song she could not silence. She had doubted them before, but now, with Daniel's blood spilled on her soil, with his courage lighting the battlefield, she felt the truth burn inside her. The council leader stepped forward. "Princess," he said coldly, "if you continue to protect this human, you risk everything, your throne, your people, your future. Choose wisely." Her chest rose and fell as she looked at Daniel once more through the flames outside. He fought with no army, no crown, no promise of glory, only with loyalty, only with hope. And something deep inside her shifted, something she had buried under duty, something her heart whispered in silence. She raised her spear high, her voice thundering through the hall. "Then hear my choice. If this human wants me as his wife, if he wishes to stand at my side, then I will not turn away. I choose him. I choose unity." The hall gasped. The council froze in shock. Her words echoed across the chamber, shaking the very stones. It was not only a declaration, it was defiance. It was destiny. Daniel stumbled into the hall moments later, his blade still glowing, his armor scarred with burns. He stopped when he saw her. Her eyes locked onto his, and for the first time her gaze was not filled with suspicion or doubt. It was filled with trust, and something stronger. The council leader's face twisted with rage. "This is betrayal," he spat. "You dare bind yourself to a human. You doom us all." But Serenia did know. At flinch, she stepped forward, standing at Daniel's side. "If unity is doom," she said calmly, "then let doom come, for I would rather fall with him than bow to fear." The fire of battle shook the palace again. Outside, the Dravari forces roared louder, but inside something greater had already begun. For the first time, a princess of Lumeria had chosen not tradition, not the council, but her own path. Daniel's chest ached with both shock and gratitude. He had never asked her to make such a vow, but her words lit a fire in him stronger than any blade. Together they turned toward the gates. The war was not over, but they would face it not as strangers, not as enemies, but side by side. And in that moment, as the walls shook and the skies burned, a bond was born, a bond stronger than prophecy, a bond that could unite two worlds, the human and the alien bride. The palace shook under the storm of war. Flames spread through the streets, painting the sky with smoke. The Dravari army pushed forward like a dark wave, their roars echoing against the walls of Lumeria. Every strike, every blast of fire carried the weight of destruction. But inside the great hall, a single choice had already changed everything. Princess Serenia had spoken her vow, before the council, before her people, before the stars themselves. She had chosen the human, and that choice carried the force of destiny. Captain Daniel Hayes stood at her side, his blade of light humming with energy. He could feel the eyes of the council burning into him, some filled with anger, some with disbelief. But he no longer feared their judgment, because Serenia had made her stand, and now, so would he. Together they stepped onto the balcony above the battlefield. The people below raised their heads. They saw their princess, her crown glowing through the smoke. They saw the human stranger at her side, scarred, weary, but unbroken, and in that sight, hope began to stir. Serenia raised her spear high, her voice carrying through the chaos. "People of Lumeria, tonight we do not fight alone. For the first time in our history, we fight beside another world. We fight beside humanity." The crowd erupted in cries of courage. Their fear began to turn into fire. Even as the Dravari forces roared louder, the spirit of the Lumerians grew brighter. The Dravari leader sneered from his warship. "Pathetic words," he growled. "No vow will save you. Your kingdom will burn, and your princess will kneel before me." Daniel stepped forward, lifting his blade. "No," he said firmly. "She will never kneel to you. Not while I stand." The enemy commander raised his staff. Energy crackled in the sky. Bolts of red lightning tore through the air, striking the palace walls. Stone shattered, towers collapsed. But still, Serenia and Daniel did not fall. The battle raged into the heart of the city. Daniel fought with a strength he did not know he had. Every strike of his blade sent shockwaves through the enemy ranks. It was as if the weapon itself grew stronger with his resolve, and beside him, Serenia fought with fire in her soul. Every movement of her spear was a song of defiance, a promise to her people that she would never surrender. But the Dravari were many, and their leader was powerful. He descended from his warship, his crimson armor blazing with energy. Towering over the battlefield, he raised his staff to the sky. "I will end this now," he roared, "and crush your hope forever." The ground cracked beneath his power. The soldiers of Lumeria staggered. Even the bravest warriors felt fear. But Serenia did not move. She stepped forward, her voice steady. "You may have strength, but you will never understand what binds us, and that is why you will fail." The Dravari leader laughed. "Empty words. Show me your strength, princess. Show me this human you would bind you, or self too." Daniel's chest burned. He knew this was more than a battle, it was a test. The final trial, not of loyalty, not of courage, but of unity itself. He looked at Serenia, her eyes met his, and without speaking they understood. This fight was not hers alone, it was not his alone, it was theirs. They stepped forward together, her spear and his blade crossed in light. Energy flared between them, brighter than fire, brighter than the stars. It was not just power, it was the bond of two worlds. The Dravari leader struck with all his might, lightning crashed, fire roared, but the combined force of Serenia and Daniel shattered his staff in a single strike. The blast of light tore through the battlefield. The enemy was thrown back, their cries fading into silence. The great warship above cracked, its engines failing. The Dravari, broken and leaderless, began to retreat into the shadows. When the dust settled, silence fell. The people of Lumeria looked up at their princess and the human who stood beside her. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the crowd erupted in a cry that shook the heavens. Unity, unity, unity. Serenia lowered her spear, her chest rising and falling. Her people surrounded her, their faith restored, their hearts burning with new hope. Daniel stood at her side, exhausted but unbroken. He had come here as an outsider, but now he was something else. Not just a guest, not just a fighter, but the man who had helped save a world. The council could no longer deny it. The prophecy had spoken, and destiny had been fulfilled. That night, as the fires of war died out, Serenia stood with Daniel on the balcony once more. The stars stretched above them, endless and bright. "You are not only a human," she said softly. "You are my choice, and with you, I will walk into whatever future comes." Daniel looked at her, his voice steady but filled with awe. "Then let it be our future, together." And beneath the endless stars of Lumeria, a bond was sealed, not just between a man and a princess, but between two worlds. A bond born of fire, tested in war, and chosen by the heart, the human and the alien bride, together at last, the end. Enjoyed the story? Like it and subscribe for more.